네, 여러분.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be a moderator of the 10th 21st Century Human Value Forum. My name is Shim Jung-wook. Nice to meet you. So I would like to give my deepest welcome and thanks to all of you for coming here out of your very busy schedule. My deep thanks go to our distinguished guests, speakers, and participants from home and abroad and both online and offline. From 27th of October until today, for the past 3 days, we have successfully held the 10th 21st Century Human Value Forum, and my deep appreciation goes to all of you. So now we are going to start the closing ceremony of the 10th 21st Century Human Value Forum. The first part will be started with the special lecture. Who am I? What is life? How shall we live? So these questions have been studied and considered by a number of philosophers and people for thousands of years. So in the closing session, in order to get the story and get some answer to this question, we have Professor Dennis Noble, an emeritus professor of Oxford and a pioneer of system biology. Who am I? Moving beyond the perspective of biology and genetics, from philosophical perspectives, we explore the answer to these questions together with Professor Noble. So now we are going to have Professor Dennis. Please give him a round of applause.
I'd like to welcome Dr. Dennis Noble to the stage to deliver us a special lecture on Who Are We? 네, 데니스 노블 교수님께서 첫
Now, after the first lecture by Professor Dennis Noble, we will have the discussion.
영어로 말하겠습니다. 미안합니다.
I'll be speaking in English. I'm very sorry.
English fairly slowly because I know with the difficulty of learning your language how different English and Korean are. Old Question was the title of a documentary filmed here in Korea when Professor and I toured Korean temples to discuss with Buddhist monks one of the deepest questions that's been discussed by humanity for thousands of years. Who are we? The 20th century biological science answer is that genes, molecules, because that's all they are, genes created us body and mind, to quote the famous book by Richard Dawkins, The Selfish Gene. And it's based, of course, on standard gene-centric evolutionary biology, the modern standard theory. And it implies, first of all, that we humans, and certainly animals, are simply machines with no ability to choose. Furthermore, that we are born selfish, and that living organisms like you and me are simply vehicles for the preservation of our selfish genes. Excuse me, just one moment. Last year, in the United Kingdom, I had the great pleasure to debate this issue with the author of The Selfish Gene, Richard Dawkins, claiming, of course, that genes use organisms, you and me, as tools for their own preservation. And I replied to him at the very beginning of the debate, no, they can't, Richard. We, organisms, use genes to make the proteins we need. And in that debate, I dealt with each of the simple proofs that show that genes cannot determine us. For example, each time your heart beats, once a second approximately, there is no time for gene expressions to change. That takes tens of minutes, even hours. There is even less time for gene sequences to change. That takes many days. Our immune systems during the COVID pandemic showed that. We needed around a week to become self-immunized through the changing of our genes in the immune system. Nor is there time for genes to determine most of the choices we make in life. 1 minute we may choose to be selfish, but if we are kind the next minute, we're using the same genes each time we make those two different choices. Genes simply enable the proteins we need to live to be made. That is all they do. For example, how many muscle proteins are produced when you exercise, that is determined by us exercising. But those extra proteins don't determine in which direction we run or where we are going, who we are meeting. We are responsible for those decisions. And this is an empowering view of what it is to be humans. Genes, therefore, did not create us body and mind. We are free agents. And we become who we are by our social interactions. That is the nature of the self, to which I'll return towards the end of the talk, and we develop that nature ourselves in our social interactions. It is therefore our responsibility to choose wisely. I'm going to be a little technical just for a minute or so, because I should explain to you that there are simple proofs also that the 20th century gene-centric view of biology is indeed completely wrong. There are 4 main dogmas on which we have been misled for at least half a century since the double helix was discovered. First, the central dogma of molecular biology: genes make proteins and proteins make us. Second, what is called the Weissman barrier, after a German geneticist who invented the idea at the end of the 19th century. He said that the germ cells, the future eggs and sperm that would create the next generation, can never be influenced by the life experiences of the parent. Third main dogma, that DNA, the genes, they self-replicate like a crystal. Some of you as children will have played with chemistry sets in which you watch a crystal growing in a solution of the salt that forms it. Each of those molecules just inserts itself into the crystal. And dogma 4, that the replicator, DNA, is separate from its vehicle, that is us, the body. Now, all of these are wrong. The central dogma is a simple chemical fact that DNA forms RNA that forms proteins. It does not prevent the organism from changing its genes. We know that because during the COVID pandemic, that's precisely what our bodies were doing, changing the genes in the relevant part of the immune system to enable us to counter the invader. Dogma 2, the Weissman barrier. We have now shown, physiologists have shown, in the last 10 years or so, that controlling RNAs, those are little bits of a different type of nucleotide, which control DNA, those have been shown to pass body characteristics inherited during our own lives to the germline. Complete end of the Weissman barrier. The idea that DNA self-replicates. Yes, it does, provided you are a virus with only around 10 to 30,000 genes in your genome, you can then replicate automatically. We, as humans, have 3 billion base pairs. That would produce that mechanism causing at least one error every 10,000 base pairs would create nearly 1 million errors in a single genome. We wouldn't live if that were the case. What happens? We, the organism, we're not conscious of this, but our living cells proceed to use an army of enzymes to correct all of those errors. The end, therefore, of any idea that DNA in bodies like ours can self-replicate, and for that reason, self-replication of DNA is impossible in our DNA and most other organisms' DNA, and therefore the replicator is not separate from its vehicle. It is impossible, therefore, to continue to claim that somehow genes are using us for their own replication. The correct interpretation, therefore, of the molecular biological data, and I've spent the last 10 years working all of this out. I can provide chapter and verse, and you can find it on my website if you need to. The fact is that the molecular biological information we now have shows that all of these dogmas are incorrect. Now I come to the important implications. Does it matter who we are? You bet it does. Just one example. Doesn't genome sequencing deliver us the goods that matter, that is, new medical treatments for all the diseases we encounter? The idea was very simple when the Genome Project was launched in the 1990s and then successfully did the first sequencing in 2001. Find the gene variant causing the disease, then replace or delete it. And we were promised by the head of the United States Human Genome Project and by the equivalent in the United Kingdom that this would lead to cures for all the majors of diseases of mankind. Well, with the exception of a few well-known genetic diseases in about 5% of people, the answer is an embarrassing no. And that has just been shown this month by a press release from University College London, where a major team of medical scientists applied the techniques, the well-honed techniques of clinical trial, the same standard as you would apply to any new drugs brought on the market. They asked the question in a long study, does your genome predict which diseases you will get? And the embarrassing answer is no. The effective prediction is close to zero. There are as many errors, falsely predicting that people will have a particular disease. Yes, you can still go to 23andMe and many other companies that will sequence your genome, but beware. Do not think that if that company replies with the details on what diseases you're likely to be more susceptible to, that means it will happen. We are creating anxiety in people through this false story that somehow knowing genomes will give you the answer. So, Denis Noble now tells you that view of biology generated during the 20th century with great confidence. Richard Dawkins writes his books brilliantly. I've always acknowledged that. I know him very well. But what is it, Professor Noble, you would like to see replace it? Well, there's been a simple answer for at least 20 years now. By many of us, a small number compared to the total number of biological scientists, but still a growing number, who argue that what we need is a multi-level, multifactorial systems biology, because causation between all levels of the organism can produce changes in the other levels. We know that already. Come back to the immune system during the COVID pandemic. Our immune systems, unknown to us, but they're very clever, even if we don't direct this particular aspect of our lives, our immune systems were automatically producing immunoglobulins that would attack the virus. So we know that higher levels constrain all the lower levels, including genes. Moreover, as you'll find in the book that I've highlighted there, Dance to the Tune of Life, the metaphor is simple. The genes are dancing to the tune of our lives. That's our nature as human beings. What is a necessary mathematical fact, because I'm a mathematical biologist as well as a systems biologist, the necessary mathematical fact is that you can't even integrate the equations without what are called boundary conditions. The mathematicians in this audience will know what I mean. What are they? Higher levels of organization in you and me form those boundary conditions for all the lower levels. That is precisely how those higher levels of organization, including our consciousness and awareness, can influence activity at the very lowest level, including genes and other molecules. Now I come to what may be a surprise to many of you. A few years ago, I was looking through some literature on various sutras used in the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, which is your tradition here in Korea. And I was working at that moment in the library of the School of Oriental and African Studies in the University of London. Incidentally, my own old university. University College London was, those days, part of that university. And then I came across this extraordinary text from your 7th century monk, Won Hyo, illustrating the concept of conditioned arising, which is a multi-level view, using the relation between the seed and fruit of a plant. And he was arguing that, of course, causation goes both ways. And I said to myself, this is 1,400 years ago a form of the biological relativity that I'm arguing for in Dance to the Tune of Life. It is the central concept, no privileged level of causation, is therefore the very opposite of selfish gene theory and of the central dogma of molecular biology, that, to repeat what I said earlier, genes do not create us body and mind. Here is his text. The Chinese, of course, in those days, a Korean like Won Hyo was writing in classical Chinese. Hangul did not exist then until much later, when King Sejong's scholars produced it. I've worked through the Chinese characters, though I will tell you that this particular translation is the accepted translation, not the one that I worked on, but I worked on it enough to know that this accepted view in the classical literature is pretty close to what Won Hyo was writing. He wrote, "The fruit and the seed are not the same, for they have different shape. However, they are not different. Besides, the seed and the fruit are not annihilable. One is produced, the fruit therefore is produced from the seed. However, they are not eternal, for there's no seed when it is in the form of the fruit." I won't read the whole thing through. You can all check it very easily. What I will go on to do is a very simple experiment, and here it is. Just replace seed with genotype. The biologists amongst you will surely accept that's not a bad replacement. After all, the seed contains the genome. And replace fruit with the phenotype. The fruit is a form of what in biology today we call phenotype. And it just reads perfectly well. The phenotype and the genome are not the same, for they have different shape. However, they're not different. Besides, the genome and the phenotype are not annihilable. And so you can go on. It reads, in other words, like a text that I could easily have included in Dance to the Tune of Life as an explanation of the principle of biological relativity. So I pay homage to the tradition in this country, and indeed a tradition that goes way back also to Taoism, where this concept of conditioned arising, dependent on all levels of causation, is deeply embedded in your culture, and long may it continue to be so. So, the system's biological view of the self, and this is the finishing of my talk and will lead up to my comments on what I think the self is. The reductionists, that is the gene-centric biologists, are correct on one thing. The self does not exist at the level of molecules, including genes as DNA molecules. Why is that the case? Well, first of all you can see down at that level are molecules. Second, molecules have no choice in what they do. They just follow the physics and chemistry of what molecules do. Yet, the gene-centric biologists also think that molecules form all that matter that exists in the universe. Well, you've got to add atoms and the electrons, but those are components of molecules. So it means that once you've counted the molecules and all their components, you've got all the matter that exists. Well, my answer to that is very simple. Higher levels in our organization as human beings, those higher levels are processes of organization, not more matter. The self, therefore, is best viewed as also being a process. And in that case, it is not a thing. We don't find ourselves inside our brains or anywhere else in our body. And as I've pointed out in recent books, this resembles the Oriental view of no self, in Pali, anatta, in Sanskrit, anat man. And I wrote a book nearly 20 years ago now, The Music of Life, which uses music as a metaphor of life, a process again, rather than a thing. The music is not the notes, it's the musicians playing the music. And in that book, published in 2006 from Oxford University Press, I used the ox herder parable from the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, which is the parable of a boy who looks for his ox that is lost in the long grass. Eventually he finds the ox, and he proceeds at last to capture the ox, to lasso it, and climbs on it and rides the ox back to town. And you'll all be familiar with the fact that perhaps as children you saw these beautiful drawings of the boy playing his pipe on the ox running back to town. And then the next image, there's nothing. The ox, the boy, the pipe have all disappeared. And of course, it's a parable that tries to get across one of the experiences of that kind of meditation. The ox, of course, is the self. The self disappears when you focus on it. You find you can't find it. But nevertheless, of course, it does exist in a sense. How does it exist? Well, in that tour of Korean temples in 2019 that Professor and I had the great privilege to have, we visited Silsangsar, where Dobop Sunim gave the key, of course. He said, one cannot be happy alone. The self does not exist just in me or in you. It forms, as I said earlier on, in social interactions, and it therefore exists in a sense communally. We are ourselves, our own self, because of those communal interactions. And I think that's what Dobop Sunim means by saying we cannot be happy alone. Of course, it's also true. We're much happier interacting with other people. And I finish with a very simple philosophical problem. Is this actually a conceptual problem, or is it an empirical problem? Because if it can be discovered through meditation, it seems to be a psychological empirical fact discovered through that meditation, as the ox herder parable suggests. But of course, as I viewed it from a biological relativity perspective, it is actually a necessary conceptual fact. It depends on that mathematical fact that you necessarily must have the boundary conditions to integrate any equations for describing any process. So can these two be reconciled, the conceptual and the empirical? I think the answer is yes. And that's because of another reason why I think 20th century biology went down the wrong path. 20th century biology, including the greatest of those who made the major discoveries, and I'm not denigrating those discoveries, the discovery of the double helix, the discovery of RNAs, and so on and so forth. All of that is great. But many of those 20th century biologists were very, very dismissive of philosophy. And they were deeply wrong to be so, because no science can advance without a metaphysical context, whether or not this is openly acknowledged. The metaphysical context of gene-centric biology is that somehow the molecular level necessarily must be the process that determines everything that happens. That is not a provable empirical fact. In fact, it's now been shown to be completely wrong. But it was certainly not, therefore, an empirical discovery. And yet, it was presented as one. I think, therefore, 20th century biology made a big mistake by denigrating philosophical thought. That should never have been done. As I say here, no science can advance without a metaphysical context, whether or not this is openly acknowledged. And I'm going to complete this little talk by reading the very ending of this book that's just appeared, Understanding Living Systems, in which I and my co-author have tried to explain what I've told you today in completely lay language. There's no technical detail or very minimal technical detail in the book. And we finish with a challenge to the next generations who need to deal with the problems which now arise because we've been misled by biological science for over 50 years. And we wrote at the very end, it will require creative ingenuity to shift the culture of biology away from the misunderstandings of the 20th century. It will be for a new generation to discover and create their own culture, fit for the challenges of the 21st century. And they will have plenty of looming signposts to warn them what went wrong, because theirs will be a generation that must take responsibility for the way in which the Earth's ecosystems need rescuing, even for our own species to survive. Theirs, the young generations, will be the generations that face the challenge of aging societies, requiring medical science to find solutions to the diseases of old age that do not readily yield to reductionist gene-centric solutions, since those diseases are multifactorial. Only an integrative systems approach that understands those multifactorial interactions can possibly hope to address those diseases. Theirs will be a generation that can try to recover from the damage to society that results from reductionist models of physiology and evolution that have metaphorically shaped ideas and models in fields as diverse as economics. The economists use the same equations as the evolutionary biologists. Sociology, philosophy, ethics, politics, the list goes on, because no aspect of today's society can have escaped the dogmas like we are born selfish. They, the genes, created us body and mind. It's in their DNA. We say it all the time, it's in his DNA. It's rubbish. And of course, the myriad of other tropes and metaphors of related types that we now use almost without thinking. And our final paragraph is, those future generations will also need to rewrite the textbooks. I was, until a few years ago, the president of the International Union of Physiological Sciences. I will be addressing one of its major congresses here in Daegu in just a few days' time with exactly this message. And I'm working with that International Union's Committee on Publications to see what is possible, to find the authors to rewrite the textbooks. So those future generations, and I'm going to try and identify who they should be, will also need to rewrite the textbooks, not only because they see the virtue of let us therefore teach our children, which is Richard Dawkins' way of countering his own idea, the selfish gene. If we're born selfish, we need to be taught to be cooperative. It just isn't right. Not only that, but also because they're politicians, they're economists, they're sociologists and philosophers will also need to find new strategies in collaboration with biologists who can lead them out of the gene-centric impasse. It is arguably a challenge the scale of which human society has never faced before. We wish them all well. 정말로 고맙습니다.
네, 배달 고맙습니다. 우리는
Thank you so much. Who are we? It's the question that we have raised so far, and Professor Noble has been giving us a lot of challenges as well as answers. Thank you very much. So join me in giving him a big hand. During his lecture, he said that 1,400 years ago, the Buddhist monk Won-hyo was able to be identified with his ideas about the biology. So it is not possible to define what human beings are about but just simply with genetics, and everything depends on us, not the genes. Genes cannot control the body or mind. So thank you very much for such a wonderful input. Now we will have a discussion moment between Professor Noble and Professor Young-ui of Seoul National University. So they're going to talk about the important issue, the old question, who are we? And also he will be talking about the important impact from the central dogma to the 21st century. Now I'd like to give you Professor Young-ui as well as Professor Noble back on the stage. Please welcome them with a big round of applause.
Your idea is really revolutionary.
It turns everything upside down.
Yes,
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 I totally agree.
Yeah.
But it's necessary.
Yeah. So last 50 years or 80 years, we worked on the basis of self-gene theory.
Exactly so. Since Julian Huxley wrote Evolution, the Modern Synthesis in 1942, leading up towards Richard Dawkins publishing The Selfish Gene, first in 1976, and then all the way through. And sadly, as you and I both know as medical professors, we've wasted time that we could have been using to develop cures for the diseases we now face as an aging population.
So the self-gene theory, influenced so great in 20th century especially, not only in biological or medical science, but also in sociology or the economics everywhere. Especially, I like to mention about the major cancer research or treatment is based on the self-gene theory.
Exactly so.
So that must be very, very the waste of money for doing
Well,
that.
that's what some of the big cancer people will say now. Azra Raza in New York has stated this very, very clearly. She points out that with late-stage cancer, third and fourth stages of metastasis, as it's called, our treatment, which is usually chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or a combination of the two, is first of all itself very damaging. They're very difficult treatments to support. Their performance in dealing with late-stage cancer is no better than it was 50 years ago when Richard Nixon, the President of the United States, launched the war on cancer. We're losing the war on cancer. Now, that's not to say there aren't some therapies that work well when you capture it young, when the cancer is identified before it's got to that kind of late stage.
Yes.
But generally speaking, the answer is sadly not very good.
Yeah, that's right. So still, we are very much suffered from the cancer or chemotherapy, whatever.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so. And you know, I think one can see why that is the case. You see, a cancer in us is like an other organism growing within us. It's a part of us that doesn't any longer regard itself as part of the self that is us. So what does it do? It tries to survive. If it's attacked with radiotherapy, it mutates, it changes its genomes.
Yes.
Of course it does. It does exactly what we do when we face a pandemic. Changes its genomes. So what usually happens with radiotherapy and chemotherapy is you get remission for a while. Sadly, though, in most cases, it's never complete, it's never permanent, because it will eventually come back. I'm not trying to frighten people, I'm just being realistic. There has to be better ways of identifying early stage. That's what Azaraza in the United States also proclaims.
Yeah, okay. Okay, maybe the audience is more interested in the influence, your ideas influence to public, our people's thinking way. So far, many people, or most people maybe, are based on the selfish gene theory. So I am very selfish. So according to the theory, the people's thinking must be changed.
I think it must. You see, let's give Richard Dawkins great credit where credit is due. The writing is brilliant. That's why it's so convincing. It's also an extremely simple story. It's the most simple story that biologists have ever produced. That is, all the way from that inert molecule, which is DNA, suddenly, over 9 months or so, it develops an extraordinary organism, which is you and me. Yes, that's right. It's an extremely simple story. So the writing is what is so convincing. What I think is needed now is that those of us who think that all of those major dogmas have now been destroyed by molecular biology itself. It's not philosophy that has destroyed the gene-centric view, it's the very molecular biological basis on which they thought they had a secure ground. I think it's incumbent on us and on the younger generation to write the books that are convincing as Richard Dawkins' Selfish Gene. That's not easy. So I give Richard great credit for being a fabulous writer. He's a fabulous writer
certainly.
of a fable.
Yeah, certainly.
A fairy story.
So, yeah, I think that's based on your theory, our society will be more cooperative and more flourish.
Hope so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
네, 굉장히
So even though it was very short, but I think we had a very productive dialogue together and about the question who we are. Please give them a round of applause. So the biological and medical factors have been so far focused on selfish gene, but we have to take some different perspective and different approach. So now we are going to start a closing ceremony. Humanitas, who and what we are, has been the topic for the past 3 days. With a lot of participation and great attention, we had diverse programs. So now let's look at the video of the past 3-day journey.
스스로를 성찰하고 현실을 직시하며 미래로 나갈 방향을 고민할 수 있는 중요한 질문이 될 것입니다.
문학을 통해서 우리는 문화적인 다양성을 포용할 수 있으며 이것은 위협이 아니라 강력한 힘으로 이해할 수 있는 것입니다.
인문 가치는 우리가 살아가야 할 지표입니다. 인문 가치가 성실히 잘 수행될 때 지속 가능한 인류의 미래는 확보될 것이라고 생각이 됩니다.
Qui sommes-nous? Cette question qui se pose à chacun d'entre nous. Qui sommes-nous et que faisons-nous pour changer le monde?
처음에는 인문가치 포럼이라 해서 되게 어렵게 생각했었는데 이렇게 아이와 함께 할 수 있는 프로그램을 마련해 주셔서 되게 즐거운 시간을 보낸 것 같습니다. 감사합니다.
즐거운 시간 마련하게 해주셔서 정말 감사합니다. 내년에 다시 오고 싶어요.
참여하고 진행했던 것을 위주로 발표했다 보니까 더 뜻깊었고 지속가능 발전 목표에 대해 어떻게 더 달성해야 할지 알 수 있는 계기가 되었던 것 같아서
학생들 참여할 수 있는 부스 같은 것도 되게 많더라고요. 그래서 꼭 한 번씩 와가지고 참여하는 것도 좋을 것 같고요.
오늘은 21세기 인문가치 포럼에 함께 하게 되었는데요. 일단 너무 즐거운 시간이었던 것 같아요. 우리가 점점 변화 속에서 더 많은 가치를 얻게 된다라는 것을 얘기하고 싶었습니다. 다음번에 또 함께 뵐 수 있었으면 좋겠습니다.
청춘이라는 의미를 저도 잘 몰랐는데 이곳에 와서 청춘이라는 의미를 어떤 건지 알게 됐고 내년에 이런 포럼을 하면은 좀 다시 한번 참여해서 재밌게 즐기도록 할 예정입니다.
인문가치의 다보스 포럼을 시행하는 21세기 인문가치 포럼이 올해 10회째를 맞이를 했습니다. 올해는 169명의 석학들이 왔고 전 세계 18개국이 참석을 해서 또 초등학생부터 대학생까지 참여의 저변을 넓혔고 뿐만 아니라 서울, 부산, 대구에서 아마 글로벌 하는 데 많이 기여를 했다고 생각합니다. 그러나 인문가치 포럼이 가야 할 길은 아직 멉니다. 우리나라가 이제 잘 사는 나라에서 행복한 나라로 가기 위해서는 우리 인문가치 포럼이 안동을 넘어서 대한민국을 넘어서 세계로 가야 합니다. 그때까지 우리는 꿋꿋이 가겠습니다.
21세기 인문가치 포럼 화이팅!
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 화이팅! 화이팅!
재밌었어요.
Mucha suerte al foro.
21세기 인문가치 포럼 화이팅!
네, 여러분 큰 박수 한번 보내주시죠.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please give it a round of applause. Thank you. So we have looked back our 3-day journey, and only by watching the video we could vividly feel and sense the vibrancy of the 21st Century Human Value Forum. So I would like to give my deepest thanks to all the participants today. Thank you. So next, we are going to have the special performance congratulating the closing ceremony of the 21st Century Human Value Forum. This team has a very special relationship with the forum, and this team has been with us from the opening ceremony. And marking the 10th anniversary of the Human Value Forum, they came here in person. We are going to listen to the choir with beautiful voices, and also there's a performance of show choir. Harmonize. Please come to the stage and give them a round of applause.
Marching on to the beat that roar. 날 가뒀던 끝없는 어둠과 끝나지 않을 것만 같던 시린 밤 어두웠던 시간 속에서도 난 희미한 빛을 따라 끊임없이 달려가 이젠 고개를 들어봐 넌 You can wake up Still in the dark you must head up Yeah 뒤는 돌아보지 마 우린 앞으로만 가지 이미 강한 우릴 봐 때론 승리하지 다시 몇 번을 쓰러지더라도 다시 일어나 널 믿고 있는 사람들의 손을 꽉 잡아 그럴수록 더욱 단단해진 맘 함께라면 우리 더 밝은 빛이 나 승리만이 우리가 가는 길 We never stop dreaming
This is brave, this is smooth, this is who I'm meant to be. When the trumpet roars, wanna cut me down. Send the flood, gonna drown him out. This is brave, this is smooth, this is who I'm meant to be. This is me. Look out, I see my God.
So nice to meet you, everyone. So let me introduce ourselves. We were the gold medalist of the Global Choir Group. We are Harmonize. Nice to meet you all. The 21st Century Human Value Forum 2023, we are very honored to be here on the closing ceremony with all of you. And also, I would like to give my deepest appreciation for inviting us here today. Show choir, done by Harmonize, aims to connect between people and also achieve the harmony. So I think this is also closely related to the human value of this forum. So I sincerely expect, and also a couple of years ago, we were on the stage, and also we are very glad to meet you again here. So nice to meet you again, and I feel very honored and great to be here. The 21st Century Human Value Forum marks the 10th anniversary this year. Harmonize also marks the 10th year this year. So both of us are 10-year-old. Thank you. So in order to create a better world, let's work together and let's move forward. Keeping that in mind, we prepared the next song. This is the Song of the Wind by Jo Yong-pil.
살면서 듣게 될까 언젠가는 바람의 노래를 세월 가면 그때는 알게 될까 꽃이
여러분들 다 같이 손을 좌우로 흔들어 볼까요? 좋습니다.
So the next performance is prepared for marking the 10th anniversary.
여러분들 함께 불러주시겠습니까?
So why don't you sing along together?
아주 작은 몸짓 하나라도 느낄 수 있는
네, 좋습니다.
소리 없는 침묵으로도 말할 수 있는
더 큰 목소리로 불러보겠습니다.
이제 저희 하모나이즈가 준비한 마지막 무대인데요.
So this is the last performance of Harmonize. As this is our last song, why don't you enjoy together with us?
2, 3, 4.
21세기 인문가치 포럼과 함께 하시는 시간 여러분 즐거우신가요? 네 좋습니다. 이번엔 모두가 함께 할 수 있는
So why don't you stand up all together and also sing along together?
세월 속에 잊어야 할 기억들이 다시 생각나면 눈 감아도 소리 없이 그 이름 불러요. 아름다웠던 그대 모습 다시 볼 수 없는 걸 알아요. 후회 없어 좋다는 노을
노을처럼 난 너를 사랑하네. 세상은 너뿐이야. 소리쳐 부르지만 저 대답없는 널만 부르게 하는데
처음 본 순간부터 내 모습이 내 가슴 울렁이게 만들었어.
Baby, you're my trampoline. You make me bounce.
자, 다 같이 손모으리 위로 박수 크게 쳐볼게요. 박수! 우! 자, 지금부터 여러분들과 저희가 같이 노래를 불러볼 건데요. 저희가 먼저 불러드릴 테니까 잘 듣고 크게 따라 불러주세요. 준비되셨어요, 여러분? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
난 너를 사랑하네. 난 너를 사랑하네. 난 너를 사랑하네.
한번 더 불러볼게요.
난 너를 사랑하네. 난 너를 사랑하네. 이 세상은 너뿐이야. 소리쳐 부르지만 저 대답없는 널만 부르게
마지막으로 한번 더 불러볼게요.
난 너를 사랑하네. 이 세상은 너뿐이야. 소리쳐 부르지만 저 대답없는 널만 부르게 하는데
여러분들과 함께한 시간, 저희 너무나 즐거운 시간 보냈는데요. 오늘 저희 하모나이즈 공연을 통해서 여러분들 행복한 기억 가득 채워가시길 바라겠습니다. 지금까지 쇼카의 그룹 하모나이즈였습니다. 감사합니다. 하모나이즈였습니다. 감사합니다.
So thank you very much. So it was a really great performance. So Harmonize, who have shown a very great performance, giving us a great impression. And they also marked the 10th anniversary together. Please give them a round of applause again. So I also look around the floor and I feel very great that participants here really enjoy the performance. So by looking at your enjoyment, we could think about today's topic again, who we are and what we are. I would like to give my deepest appreciation again for all of you for joining us together, and please give you a round of applause again. So next, we are going to have closing remarks by Mr. Lee Hee-bum, founding director of the Korea Foundation of Cultures and Ethics. Please give him a round of applause. So the 10th 21st Century Human Value Forum is now the time to end. Those who meet must part. As the saying goes, whenever there's a meeting, there's a parting. By marking the 10th anniversary, we have pursued a number of different changes. Under the topic of humanitas, who and what we are, we have set the new direction of human policies and also the national studies, Korean studies, dialogue between Twege and Da Vinci, and we also held the first International Humanities City Conference. Our participants also become more diverse, ranging from elementary school students, from undergraduate and graduate school students from KAIST and Platon Academy. Participating organizations also expanded from UNESCO Korea and Korean Studies Institute and Platon Academy, including Professor Dennis Noble, who came here to deliver his special lecture from the UK. We have Ms. Irina Bokova, the 10th Secretary General of UNESCO, and also Mr. Kwang Hyung Lee, the President of KAIST, and 120 scholars from home and abroad come here to have a lot of discussions. As of this year's 21st Century Human Value Forum, the participants increased dramatically, more than 4,000 on site and more than 8,000 online. This forum used to be the one only for Andong citizens, but now it has scaled up to the one that covers the nation, including Seoul, Goyang, Mokpo, and Busan. And also, 18 different countries from overseas joined us, including the US and Japan. Joseon Daily, Joseon Business, and Shindong-a also give us a great contribution with their sponsorship. However, we still have a long way to go to make this as a Davos Forum of Human Value, which was dreamed by our Mayor of Andong, Mr. Kwang Ki-chang, and the former Mayor of Andong, Mr. Kim Hui-dong. When you look into the Davos Forum, it has provided 480 sessions for 4 days, and Jeju Forum provides 50 sessions. Compared to that, our Human Value Forum has 37 sessions for 2 days and a half. Davos Forum and Jeju Forum are paid forum. However, our forum is sponsored by the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, Gyeongsang Provincial Government, and Andong City Government. However, it has taken quite a long time for Davos Forum to become the Global Economic Forum. It was established in 1971, and it has become global in 1987. Until that time, Davos Forum was just a small event in the mountain valley of Switzerland. As I mentioned in my opening ceremony, Korea has now become the global top 10 economy from the least developed country in the 1960s. However, our pride as the country of courtesy in the East and the hometown of Confucianism is now over. Korea has a lot of challenges, including the world #1 suicide rate and also the #1 complaints and rising drug issues and also senseless crimes. So now we need to think about how to make this country mentally healthy and happy, not just focusing on economic prosperity. So by recovering our morality and ethics, we need to think about how to make our country of courtesy in the East. So we have to make this country happier. And this should not be confined to the agenda of Andong. It should be escalated as the nationwide agenda. For the past decade, COVID-19 pandemic and the fourth industrial revolution have suggested new kind of direction for our human being. In this 10th forum, we have thought about the human nature and our attitude to prepare for a better future. And under this theme, we have shared a lot of insights and knowledge together. So now is the time to take them into action. So based on the Andong Declaration that we are going to announce today, I expect that we can make Korea much happier. Recently, President Yoon Suk-yeol and also Mr. Kim Jin-pyo, Speaker of the National Assembly, and governors and mayors of 17 different cities and provincial government visited Andong, which helped to enhance our status. So for the past 3 days, I would like to give my thanks to all the Andong citizens and Mayor of Kwon, and also the council members of Andong City Council. And also there are many distinguished guests here together, the provincial council members and the city council members. And all of you have given us a great support. So Mayor An, city council members, Andong citizens, and also the Yurim, the traditional scholars of Andong. So by completing today's forum, actually this is not the end. This is the beginning of the new start. So we are going to correct some failures and also going to improve something that we have done good. So I sincerely expect that this Human Value Forum can become the global forum of human values. So meet you next year again. Thank you very much.
네, 올해뿐만 아니라
So not only this year, but for the past decade, Mr. Lee mentioned about what we have done so far and also what is our future direction. Thank you very much. Next, we are going to share the performance results of the 21st Century Human Value Forum that will be presented by Mr. Lee. So Mr. Lee, Drew Lee from Korea Foundation of Culture and Ethics will be on the stage. Please give him a round of applause. So let me just give you the report of the 10th 21st Century Human Value Forum. So this helped to build a consensus of human value and also scale this up to the international community. And as we have seen on the performance of Harmonize, we work very hard to make this forum much younger, to communicate with the future generation. And we suggested the vision for the next decade. So this is the result of our forum. There were 4 official special sessions and 16 different sessions setting the direction of our lives, and 3 sessions about thinking about human nature, 5 sessions for teenagers, and 9 sub-sessions. So altogether, there were about 37 different sessions for this forum. And the number of speakers that participate for this forum reaches 118 from 10 different countries with diverse topics and subjects on human studies. They make very precious presentations. And the number of participants reached 4,204 on site and 8,337 online. So altogether, there were more than 12,000 participants, both online and offline. So online participants watched our forum through YouTube or the homepage of our website. So this is the end of our report, and I expect that our forum can become further evolved next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The 10th 21st Century Human Value Forum has accommodated a lot of attendance with the consensus of the future of the humanity and also international collaboration. We have had the full attendance from many countries and also from many walks of life. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee, for the hard work made so far. Now, I'd like to ask you to listen to the Andong Declaration, which is the result of the 10th 21st Century Human Value Forum. So I'd like to ask Mayor Kwon to announce Andong Declaration. Please welcome me with a big round of applause. The 21st Century Human Value Forum, or HVF in short, has the 10th anniversary. For the last decade, many changes have occurred in our society, including but not limited to the opening of the digitally connected unmanned era, widening human horizon based on technological development. The 21st Century HVF has pursued our social problems through human value by, for example, human value in the modern society, conditions for inclusive society, human value in the fourth industrial revolution. Amid the rapidly changing modern society, what is the question that we have to raise for the coming future? It might be the humanista or humanism that is the most fundamental to our very being before asking about what the future lies ahead for us. Much thought has been explored before choosing our topic as Humanista, Who Are We? For the 21st Century Human Value Forum 2023. For the last 3 days of the 10th 21st HVF, we were able to confirm that human values can become alternative for the sustainable future with the ideas of building humanistic cities based on Korean spiritual culture, humanistic activities for the youth for a sustainable future, and activating village communities through human spiritual culture. And we find it meaningful to be able to communicate with all the future leaders. Even though the time spent here is not that long, it was a crucial time to ask questions about what humanism is about, to reflect on ourselves with the question of who we are, and to delve into the future directions. The future of the humanity has been confirmed that it still rests upon human values based on the spiritual culture. When the meaning of humanism has been wasted, the human value is as precious as the rain that has been waited for long in today's world. Thus, we believe that what leads the recovery of communities are deep thinking on humanista, recovery of humanista through reflections, empathy and communications, and understanding and politeness, and for the human beings. Even when we live the age of state-of-the-art technologies, human beings still dream about the peace and happiness of the mind, which is something mysterious and cannot be identified by the science. In the end, the questions raised by the humanities circles back to the notion of human. By closing the 10th 21st Human Value Forum, we once again ask the question of humanism. This is not only the most supreme value that can be enjoyed by the humanity, but also the absolute duty for us. October 29, 2023, participants to the 10th 21st Century Human Value Forum.
네, 안동 선
Thank you very much, Mayor Kwan, for announcing and reading out Andong Declaration. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving him a big hand. This forum has been a very crucial one when we are losing the meaning of humanista. We asked questions about what directions we have to go for the future of the human beings. Throughout the days of the 10th 21st Century Human Value Forum, we really hope that you have the chance to warm it up for the future society. Also, my thanks should go to all the people who have given us the ardent support throughout the days. So for the last 10 years, Human Value Forum has been actively pursuing the issues of the values of the society as well as dealing with the questions and problems in order to envision the future days for the humanity. Once again, we are looking ahead for the future decade, and we promise you that we will come back to you every year with more enriched programs. So this has been the closing ceremony of the 10th 21st HVF. Thank you very much for your support and interest throughout the day. Also, we'd like to see you again next year. And also, we are looking forward the continued and undivided attention on us. Thank you very much for your time. And this has been Shim Jong-won, announcer. Thank you very much.